I want to go through the 5 types of bullshit jobs that David Graeber goes over in this book. And this book was so thought-provoking for me. It really just got my economic brain thinking. And in a lot of ways, there's actually a lot of hope if we are trying to sort of restructure the economy in the notion that a lot of jobs actually don't serve a real economic role in the economy. Now, I'm going to have a different perspective on some of these types of jobs than he does, but let's first just go over what does he mean by bullshit jobs, what is he doing in this book. So let me read you his definition of a bullshit job. A bullshit job is a form of paid employment that is so completely pointless, unnecessary, or pernicious that even the employee cannot justify its existence, even though, as part of the conditions of employment, the employee feels obliged to pretend that this is not the case. Basically, he's looking for jobs that serve no valuable role in the economy. They're just there. And he distinguishes this from shit jobs, which might be really bad experiences to be part of, but actually do serve an economic role. Like a server at a restaurant. Like you could imagine if you have a really bad boss and the customers abuse you, that could be a shit job, like a really bad job to have. But it does create value for people because you're, serving their food, that gives them value. So that would not be a bullshit job. A bullshit job is one that actually has no purpose. And he points out that one of the things we have going in the economy is that maybe in the past, people have thought of these bullshit jobs as being government-based, bureaucratic jobs. Whereas now, a lot of these jobs exist inside the bowels of these huge corporations. In which case, you have to ask the question, if there are jobs that are completely useless, what's going wrong with the economy that would structure that sort of situation? And to give you a preview, bullshit jobs are going to include a lot of corporate lawyers. They're going to include employees who work for somebody but don't really do anything meaningful for them other than make the person they work for feel important. That kind of job is going to be in his category of bullshit job. And one thing he points out is that a lot of times these bullshit jobs make a lot more money than jobs that actually have more use in the world. Like if you compare, somebody's secretary or a corporate lawyer doing useless things, that kind of job, to someone who's working in a daycare or a construction worker or whatnot, the daycare and construction workers actually do real valuable things in the world, and they know it. They get to see the fruit of their labor, while they get paid a lot less than these bullshit jobs. And of course, in economics, there's the notion of compensating wage differentials, where if a job is really bad, like if it's high risk or high, just like a really difficult job, like mining or something like that, then you have to pay the person more in order to do the thing they don't want to do. And of course, one theory with bullshit jobs is because they are so soul-sucking, they're just icky jobs to show up every day and feel like you're not doing anything useful. There is a compensating wage differential for that. But then you have to ask the question, why is this being paid for? And why does our economic system create jobs like this? And in doing his research for the book, he basically surveys people and collects firsthand stories of people's jobs, where the person determining is this a bullshit job is the employee themselves. And he makes an argument that actually that's probably a decent way of evaluating this, because the employee knows exactly what they do and exactly what their role is. And if the job actually has a valuable role, there's an incentive for the employer to actually communicate that in some way to the employee. Unless, and he adds this exception, the corporation is doing something really nefarious so that they don't actually want people to see what their role is, because then they would notice that it's not good. Now, I could imagine a role like, say, in the CIA, where there is a valuable thing they're doing and the people at the top know what that valuable thing is, but the person in the job doesn't know it. But I was mostly fairly convinced that if someone understands what they do and they think it's a bullshit job, there's at least a pretty good chance that it actually is. So let's go through these 5 bullshit job types. In his words, flunky jobs are those that exist only or primarily to make someone else look or feel important. Now, the flunky job definitely caught my attention, I think, more than the other 4, because I have known people who have been in jobs like this. And of course, it's soul-sucking where you're not doing anything other than being the person somebody else can boss around, usually. And for our purposes today, I would like to look at what percentage of each of these bullshit job types is under the category of rent-seeking. Now, rent-seeking in economics is a concept where resources and jobs in the economy get sucked into the battle between people about what share of the pie they will get, rather than making the whole economic pie bigger. That's rent-seeking. And classic example here is if you have a river where people fish from the river, it feeds a population, but somebody owns a portion of that river. And they use chains across the river to make sure nobody can enter that part of the river without paying them. So it's almost like a toll on the river for the fishermen fishing there. And so basically, having that toll there does not add any economic value. As a matter of fact, you might have to hire someone to run that toll booth and hire someone to install the chains on that river. And those people could be working to create more economic value. But instead, they're just working to sort of channel more of the money for that fish toward a single person. So that's rent-seeking. Now, if we look at the flunky job, I think there is a portion of this that is absolutely rent-seeking. And the reason is, I think some of these jobs have to do with the competition over really important, productive people. Like here I'm imagining someone who's really networked in and can give whoever employs them access to populations to sell their stuff to, or access to other resources. So like that important networked in person. Or it could be someone who has great scientific chops and they can make things happen scientifically that are great. Or it could be someone who's like a good leader, or just someone with, there's all kinds of things where this employee is really valuable. And of course, when that happens, corporations might compete over that really valuable scientist or person. But the question is, if they're competing over higher salary, at some point when you're making enough money, you don't care as much about salary as you do about the conditions of your work. And if someone has more people underneath them, that makes them feel important showing up to work, that makes them feel like they have, territory that is their territory to do what they want with. And I mean, some people just like power for power's sake. And so one of the ways of competing with another firm over hiring these is just to say, hey, you have 10 people underneath you that you can do whatever you want with. And if that person has skills in science or skills in networking, but they're not good at managing other people, then those might just become flunky jobs where those workers just get bossed around by this important person. Their jobs don't mean anything, but the company knows if we get rid of those 10 jobs, then this person might jump ship and go to another company. So we have to have those 10 jobs as compensation, essentially, for this person who values perhaps power over others more than money. The next type of bullshit job is going to be the goon. And the author describes goons as people whose jobs have an aggressive element, but crucially, who exist only because other people employ them. And in my opinion, this is a classic rent-seeking role. It's basically, you want a bigger share of the pie for yourself, so you hire someone to aggressively advocate for that. And I honestly can't think of positive economic value for these things. Like the image of roller derby where people try to elbow the other person away from getting whatever they want. I think that's a great analogy here, where it's just people competing over the share of the pie, for the most part. Now, again, I'm trying to come up with a steelman case for why might some of these jobs be economically valuable. And of course, lobbyists are going to say that they convey information, and some of that information might be needed. Now, of course, that information is going to have the spin of whatever they're hired to spin, but there could be at least some portion of that information that the lobbyists convey that is valuable. Same with corporate lawyers. Like, I could imagine some corporate lawyers where it's two corporations suing each other, where one of the corporations actually should be defunded for whatever reason, and the corporate lawyers are doing that job, which has economic value. Like, if that thing is protected in that corporation, maybe that corporation will provide more social value to the population. So my guess is there is a certain share of these that provide economic value, but I think he's absolutely right that these are mainly rent-seeking jobs. Then there are duct tapers. Duct tapers are employees whose jobs exist only because of a glitch or fault in the organization, who are there to solve a problem that ought not to exist. And examples of this job might include people whose whole job is to like copy and paste stuff from one document to another document. Like, that job is thankless, it's not fun. AI will probably eventually do that. But I could see if you don't yet have a system that can copy and paste, you might need someone to do it. Now, the book was published in 2018, so I have a feeling that artificial intelligence will actually get rid of some of these jobs. So that's kind of a hopeful thing. However, when I read this one, it was the one of the 5 that I was actually most skeptical that these are really bullshit jobs. Mainly because you're never going to have a perfect system. Like, there will always be glitches in the system. And these companies may be weighing, okay, the cost of having that person fill that gap, or the cost of automating it, or the cost of building systems to fix it. And maybe it would be too difficult to have AI come in and do it. Or like, you can't get rid of all of these jobs. Even in a perfect system, I think there would be some jobs where it's like, we haven't yet devoted resources to fixing that problem. So in the meantime, we need to hire someone to do it. I think that's somewhat inevitable in economies. The next type is going to be box tickers. Box tickers are employees who exist only or primarily to allow an organization to be able to claim that it is doing something that in fact it is not doing. So pretend accountability. Basically, people to come in and say, yep, I checked this and I made sure we were environmentally friendly all the way. I went through the entire checklist, and they're hired to do that even though everybody knows the company is not accountable in the way it should be. So yeah, that's definitely a bullshit job. I cannot think of one reason why any of those jobs would be not bullshit. Because the person who does the box checking, they know. Like, if that person is claiming that this job is checking boxes where we really shouldn't, then yes, they're doing that. That's a good example of a 100% bullshit job. And this job is actually not only not doing anything, this job is actually detracting from the economy by not holding accountable firms that otherwise should be held accountable. And then the last type of bullshit job is a taskmaster. There's 2 types of taskmasters. One of them tells other people what to do, and the other makes up bullshit work for people under them to do. Basically, taskmasters are a certain type of middle management where there could be communication between higher-ups that skipped over that particular middle manager, but for whatever reason, the middle manager is sitting there inside the system to listen to the person above them and tell the person below them to do what the person above them said. On one hand, yuck, these jobs are horrible. On the other hand, I can see a reason for this type of job to exist. And that reason is people are not inspired to work well unless they know that somebody sees what they're doing and values what they're doing and cares that they do a good job. And if you were to get rid of a lot of these middle managers, what would happen is nobody would be watching the employees. And see, I think the wrong way of looking at that is to say employees need someone to watch them or they're going to do a bad job. I don't think that's it. I think it's the fact that the human spirit needs validation and meaning, and they need to know that somebody sees that they are the person doing this. Like, it's more of a positive thing. And I could see where having a middle manager adds positively to the lives of people who do work that is otherwise sort of buried inside this huge organization. And if you show up every day and you do your work and you do a great job because you're a good person, but nobody ever really sees that you're the one who created that work, that's kind of soul-sucking in and of itself. I could see a lot of their real roles being the eyeballs that demonstrate to the people working underneath them, somebody sees what you're doing, somebody cares. And maybe that will make that job of the people underneath them a little bit less soul-sucking. So certainly if they're making up bullshit work for the people under them to do, that's a bullshit job. Like, there's definitely versions of this that really are bullshit. Or I think it could actually become a bullshit job if the attitude of the manager is, I'm not really going to look at what people under me are doing. I'm not going to give them encouragement or demonstrate that I value what they do. Like, I would say a bad manager, a bad middle manager, can turn this from a job that actually does have economic value into one that does not. And maybe most middle managers are like that, or most aren't, I don't know. But this is one I think it does depend on the attitude of the person embodying that role.